she was talking with some people who were in charge with Mars rover. Does anybody remember when it landed? She was talking to some of these folks, and she said, you can look it up, it's quotable. Are they going to go to where the astronauts planted the flag?
Matt Brill Talk Show, back with you.
Okay. So just to give you an idea of who we're working with here. So, I get the honor now. I'm going to have to read this because there's a lot of great stuff on Jeff Utsch's bio. By the way, he is selling some shirts. Going back to our founders, no vexation without representation. Feel free to stop that. The back is pretty catchy as well. But like I said, I'm just going to have to read this because he's an absolutely amazing guy, and I don't want to get anything wrong here. Executive Vice President of Development for Compact for America Education Foundation and a founding member of the States United Balanced Budget Initiative of Arizona. We definitely need that. Served as Director and Ambassador for the Navy SEAL Foundation. 20 years experience training U.S. military personnel. Become a constitutional scholar and historian with a keen interest in the founding of the country. Graduated from the University of Arizona. Wow, I thought I'd get one. Where's Lee? Lee Draper, are you asleep? Oh my goodness, okay. All right. In 1991 with a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering, where he also served as captain of the swim team. During his swim career, Jeff was a member of the U.S. national team from 84 to 87, top 10 rankings from 84 to 88, and NCAA All-American in 1988. So those of us who are fans of, anybody watching the Olympics, you weren't in the Olympics, were you? But these are the kind of people that we admire, okay? Using the skills he developed as a swimmer, Jeff instructs Navy SEALs, Navy Special Warfare Community, and support personnel specialized tactical swimming techniques. These guys got to know how to survive these rough tides that they swim up to shore. Is that a reasonable statement? Very good. In addition, Jeff has taught Air Force pararescue jumpers, combat controllers, Force Recon Marines, Coast Guard, MSST.
Air Special Forces, Maritime Safety and Security Team.
There we go. So Coast Guard Special Forces, basically. Excellent. Greg Beers would know a little bit about that, as well as other military personnel. If that's not enough, I don't know what else needs to impress you about this guy. Jeff Utsch, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, just give me a heads up. Come pull me off.
Jeff, where's the hook?
Thank you, and it's great to be up here. I love to teach, and I love to be around Shane. I have known Shane for a long time, and I appreciate his pioneering and what he does to educate, because I'm all about education. I teach back at the Leadership and Freedom Center in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. My mom was born and raised in Gettysburg, and my dad was also Pennsylvanian, but I was raised in Richmond, Virginia. And so to age myself, in the early 70s in Richmond, you guys out here usually played cowboys against who? Indians. I mean, that's just, now it's politically incorrect to say that, but that's what we did as kids. Okay?
Cowboys versus Commanders.
Commanders, okay. But in Virginia, guess what we played? We didn't play cowboys and Indians, we played rebels against the Yankees. Okay? And so when I went up to visit my cousin, so I'm raised just outside of Richmond, right on the James River. When I'd go up to visit my cousins in Gettysburg in the summers, we would, run Pickett's Charge, and they would say, it's a good thing we beat you rebels back then. And I'm thinking, that's not what I'm being taught in Richmond in the early 70s. Now, times have changed now, but as a 5, 6, 7-year-old kid running Pickett's Charge, going about the battlefield, I really did think, well, there's two different stories here. And even watching Walter Cronkite, when the Vietnam War was going on, and seeing the artillery, the pictures as a kid in black and white, I wonder who decides what goes first. Somebody must, this must be really important if this is what they're putting on. But I had my mom, as a kid, read me the West Point story about the generals in the Civil War, North and South, that went to West Point. And so it got me very curious at an early age, what were the causes of the Civil War? Who was right? And so since a little kid, I really have dedicated myself. So my degree is in engineering, but I've spent an hour a day reading original documents. So not what people write about what people have written, but what?
Horse's mouth.
Yeah, from the horse's mouth. If I want to hear what Grant had to think, guess who I'm reading? Grant. If I want to read what Sherman said, I'm reading Sherman. I want to read Lee's letters to his wife, Meade's letters to his wife, and understand these things. And every so often, you just get this golden nugget that you go, oh my gosh, I have searched my whole life to figure this out. And here he is telling me right here in this letter. Here it is, this a wife writing back to her husband who wrote her, and there's a bit of information that we're looking for. And the light goes off. Have you ever had that type of experience, either reading scripture or all of a sudden your perspective changes? And those times are really good at enlightening. So I want to get through a lot tonight. I'm hoping to enlighten a little bit. And when I teach, I have a nonprofit down in Tucson called Heirs of the Republic. We've done it for almost 20 years. And it's an educational, because I believe in education like Shane does, because I think we will govern ourselves better when we have knowledge. You know, the thinking process or decision-making process today seems to be get a piece of information, react emotionally about it, take action, and then think about, was that really a good thing to do? You know, I still think that Davy Crockett's autobiography is the best one ever written. In his mind, if you haven't read it, you have to. And the second best autobiography is probably by Booker T. Washington. So Up From Slavery, those two are required readings in my household for my 4 kids. And the reason I love Davy Crockett is he has a motto that all of our moms told us when we were young. But he says it in a different way. Make sure always you are correct. Then go ahead. So what did our moms teach us as kids? A shortened version. Think before what? Think before you act. Let's make sure we're right before we go out there and grab the pitchforks and think about what we're doing. You know, let's make sure we have all the information we need before we go out there, right? Okay, so I think this is very important. So anytime I teach, I go by the Junto rules, which Benjamin Franklin started a mutual improvement society that he went by the Junto rules. Does anybody remember what that was? And it's the way my dad raised me. And basically, you know, everybody does raise his kids differently. But he came up to me and he said, son, there really are no rules in this household unless you break one. So what was he saying? You should, yeah, I trust you. You should know the leeways. I'm going to treat you like an adult. And if you mess up, I'm going to come down on you hard. But I'm not going to come down on anybody hard. The Junto rules, I really invite participation, questions, calling me out. It's one of the reasons that I've been able to train with the Navy so long, is I try not to pretend what I don't know. Because if you start spouting off to people things you don't know about, especially the SEAL teams, you don't last very long. They can tell what a poser is. And it's not a good thing. So I've got a lot of stories to tell, and I have some teaching and things that I really want to get in tonight. But in 2011, on May 1st, does anybody remember what happened? May 1st, 2011. I saw them at Osama bin Laden. Okay? So we got Osama bin Laden. So the highest level SEAL team was out there, and they killed Osama bin Laden. Now the reason I remember that date specifically, it was my daughter's 16th birthday. And I said, yeah, your dad has a little power. We kind of organized this to happen on your birthday. And I did, of course I didn't. I didn't know anything about it. But you know, you still got to try to be a big dad around your daughter. So in August of that same year, a helicopter went down. Not the same squadron, but the same SEAL team helicopter. And I trained many of those guys that were on that helicopter the year before and knew them. And it hit me hard. Hit me hard. So I flew back to Virginia Beach to go to that funeral. And it was a big funeral in the Virginia Beach Convention Center. There were a lot of people there. They had bagpipes. And crying widows. It was rough. It was very emotional. Yes, sir.
Was that SEAL Team 6?
Yes, I don't really say that, when I talk about it, because even though everybody knows it's out there, it's, yes. When I say the highest level SEAL team, that's kind of what I'm referring to. Yeah, there's blame to go around, and I won't get into the details there. But what happened was, right after that, I went to the funeral procession, and there were people lined up for miles, and it was very touching. After that, there was a change of command from that highest level SEAL team. So the commanding officer was changing over to somebody else. And the guy who was actually handing over command was a Vietnam veteran Marine who got out of the service and then came back at like 38 years old to go through SEAL training. And he made it. And, he lost a leg in training during his time in the SEAL teams. He's kind of a legend, and he's a great man. Humblest man you ever meet, a great leader. And so he got to give a little talk, and being invited to a change of command of the SEAL team is something that is kind of special. And there's not a lot of people that go. And I went in, and his talk moved me, and of course, I'm kind of an emotional guy sometimes, but I was really listening to what he had to say. And he said this about those on Extortion 17. He said, even if they knew the result of what would happen before they got on the helicopter to go, they would have still done their duty and did it. It's tough, but it's true. Those guys would. And you looked around the room, and these guys are beat up. You guys with patches over their eyes. You've got guys in casts. You've got guys missing legs. You've got some widows there. Because there's a few of these people carrying a heavier load than we are. And it was just, it just was something. But then he looked out to those guys who had already been operating hard for 10 years. 10 years. And they still had a long ways to go, didn't they? And their families and knowing the risks. And he said, you still have more to give. You got more to give. Because who else is going to do it? This is right after you had a lot of Naval Special Warfare personnel get killed, along with the Army helicopter. And he's looking at them and their wives in a room that wasn't any bigger than this, right here. And he's telling them, the operators and their family, right after a whole troop had been killed, you've given a lot, but you got more to give. How do you think I was feeling? Humble. Very humble. Where do they get people like this? So I could tell stories all day long about this because I'm a civilian. I don't take the risks they do. I get to peek under the sheets. When 9/11 happened, I was with that same SEAL team, teaching on base and at the pool. And, the doors to the pool swung open and some guy came in through one. He's like, some idiot just ran into one of the Twin Towers. Everybody's like, man, that guy must have been off or something, And I can't remember, maybe 30 minutes later, all the beepers started going off. All of a sudden, they cleared the base. We kept swimming, by the way. They didn't want to be swimming, but we did. We kept swimming. They brought out the little anti-aircraft tanks in the middle and cleared everything out. So when I was there with those men at that time, to tell another story, I saw all them getting prepared and ready to go downrange to do the things that they knew that needed to be done. And I was the only person there who wasn't going. How do you think I felt at that time? I felt like I was a failure, completely. Like I had not done what I should have done in my life to prepare myself to make a difference. Because all these guys are going down range and I'm stuck here. And they knew there wasn't going to be a lot of swimming. It's in a sandbox, not a lot of swimming in a sandbox. And so, as I had a couple friends get killed in February of 2002, on Roberts Ridge, you can read, there's books about it. Medal of Honor was given because of that. Some Navy Crosses given because of that. And after that, I asked a buddy of mine, Jimmy, we went out, and he's a legend in the SEAL teams. But this was a long time ago before he was a legend in the SEAL teams. And I asked him, so what can I do? And he said, let's think of it. He's an enlisted guy, you know, senior chief at the time, retired as a master chief. He said, okay, Jeff, here's what you can do. If something happens to my family, take care of it. And I'm like, Jimmy, I'm not a rich guy. I don't know if I can take care of him. He said, look, you asked the question. That's what I'm asking you to do. You want me to have a serious answer or not? I said, yeah, I do. He said, well, that's what I'm asking of you. And I said, well, what else? I said, like, what if I can't do that? And he said, he thought for a second. And then he said, do your best. Do your best. And I thought about that for a while. And I didn't have the answer. I was like, what did Jimmy think about? What do you mean by doing his best? But it came to me. What do you think came to me later? What do you think? How did I interpret that, or how would you interpret that?
Do what you can. Do it the best you can.
Okay, yeah, do it the best you can.
Aren't you already doing your best?
Well, you know, in the SEAL teams, when I was early training the SEAL teams, and look, I'm still in all of these guys, but I've been doing this 26 years. And one of the senior guys came up and he said, hey, and they call me Swimmer Dude, so they don't know my name. They say, Swimmer Dude. He came and put his arm around me. He goes, look, don't be intimidated. Don't hold us in awe. We suck. It's just that everybody else sucks a lot worse. So what did that tell me? There's always more. It's just like that commanding officer. You got more to give. You can be better. You could be the best at all these things, but guess what? You let up a little bit, what's happening? You know, lives depend on this. So what I took as Jimmy saying, do my best, was this. It's like, look, if I am risking my life for you, and you waste your life eating Cheetos, watching Gilligan Island reruns, I'm going to be pissed. Okay, but if you do your best and try to reach your potential, then I'm okay with that. That's worth sacrificing my life for. And I thought about that a little bit. And then I said, okay, in order to do your best, in order for us to do our best, and one of the things the founders discovered was the relationship between freedom and opportunity. Washington said, if we can keep this form of government for one generation, we will become the wealthiest people on the earth. And guess what happened? Because it unleashed the human potential. Did it not? And so Thomas Jefferson said something like, look, a society that is ignorant and free is something that never was, nor ever can be.
A country that expects to be free and ignorant expects that to which never was and never will.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah, well, he just said it more eloquently of what I said. And what Jefferson said. So we need to become educated. And perspective is really important. Because if one has the wrong perspective and not the truth, how can we live by Davy Crockett's creed of making sure you're correct before going ahead? So perspective is something I wanted to talk about a little bit today. Who's seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life? Almost everybody. Okay? I want you to think about it. So George Bailey had a doom and gloom attitude and wanted to kill himself, did he not? Because his perspective on his life was he was a loser, he wasn't doing anything, he didn't go anywhere, he didn't make a difference. And then you had the angel. What was his name? Clarence. Oh, I love Clarence. Okay. So you had Clarence helping show him what was true. Would you agree? Not false. What was true? Because he did make a difference. He wasn't seeing it. And so what happened within a matter of hours? He went from doom and gloom to what? Elation. Life is wonderful. This is what's happening. So false narratives can destroy people, but it can also destroy nations. It can destroy people and nations. Do you know I spent 5 weeks last year going around the country, not teaching swimming to our military, but with the commander's intent of help my people feel good about wearing the uniform again. Because what's going on?
You're being undermined every day.
False narratives. False narratives are going on that we are bad. We must be bad because we had slavery. We must be bad because of the 1619 Project. I've read the 1619 Project. It's false narratives. But when people believe that, guess what? It doesn't work out too well. So we need to learn what happened. So John Adams said the real revolution didn't happen when the first shots were fired, but in the 15 years preceding Lexington and Concord. The real revolution did not happen when the first shots were fired, but in the 15 years preceding Lexington and Concord. So what do you think he meant by that?
Starting the hearts and minds of people.
Yes. He said, look, there was a transformation from the colonial mindset to the American mindset. So in 1760, what were some of the beliefs we had? Were we willing to be subject to a king? Yes. Were we willing to have some of our lands off limits and, okay, we're going to listen to what the king has to say? Appointed governors, right? Appointed religious leaders. Certain taxes, even before we revolted, yes. Certain trade, right? Who we could deal with. And so what was the priority? We were okay with that because who was the mother hen protecting us? Great Britain. It was the trade-off. But in those 15 years, if you look at the transformation, all of a sudden by 1775, did we want a king anymore? No.
Nope.
We wanted to elect our own governors. We wanted to decide who we were going to pay as our religious leaders. We wanted to be able to call our legislatures when we wanted to and not have them disbanded, right? We wanted to decide who we were going to trade with, how much we were going to sell for, what kind of lands we were going to use, and all those kind of things. So we transformed from the colonial to the American mindset in 15 years. That is a revolution. In Patrick Henry's famous Liberty or Death talk, does anybody remember when that was given?
During the Virginia ratification.
It was on the third convention of the Virginia. It was a convention on deciding, are we going to support those in Massachusetts or not? At St. John's Church. So every time I fly back east to go teach the Navy, I fly into Richmond because that's where I'm from. I visit my brother. I visit the place I was raised, and I go by St. John's Church. Because it is one of the greatest speeches of all time. And when I teach the military, I said, look, if you want to learn two of the greatest speeches I think of all time, of how to disagree without being disagreeable, but standing on principle, on the high moral ground, and getting your point through. Everybody knows the last paragraph of Patrick Henry's speech. That ends in give me liberty or give me death. But when's the last time you've read the whole thing? It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Jefferson said he was the greatest orator of the ages. Not just of his time, of the ages. Thomas Jefferson was in that church when he gave that speech. And guess what? The practical guys were winning. Because they were saying, and we're talking about changing perspective, because it takes skill, it takes knowledge, it takes education, it takes knowing how to pull on not only just emotion, but understanding all the nuances of how to persuade. And Patrick Henry was a natural master of it. You could get a doctorate in this topic just by reading his speech. And if you want another doctorate, you can read in Madison's notes on the Constitution, which is Benjamin Franklin's speech at the end of Constitutional Convention. Because Benjamin Franklin does almost as good a job as convincing everybody, hey, let's be unanimous, and it's not perfect, but let's do it. But during the Virginia Convention to decide if they were going to help out Massachusetts, Patrick Henry gave everybody their due. Hey, with all due respect, but on something this important, we need to be honest with each other. And I'm not here to bash you, but we need to really lay down the line here and think about what we're doing and decide. We've tried this. We've tried this. In the end, hope is not a strategy. And he talks about this. But then he sets the principles. He sets the principle. If life's so dear, right, or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery, is peace so dear, or life so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God, right? I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. That still stirs in me an emotion, because America's first principle was what? It was liberty. It was more important than life. Yes, sir?
Well, it's liberty, not freedom. There's a big difference between the two.
You can define it different ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me liberty or give me death. Yes, sir?
What was the second speech? I didn't catch it. You said that.
Benjamin Franklin's
Okay.
speech at the end of the Constitutional Convention.
Thank you.
Now look, I wrote an article in May of 2020. It's almost been 2 years. It's the first article I had go viral. So it was getting 3,000 to 4,000 hits a minute. In the state, because I wrote what Doug Ducey should have said. Now I'm not here to bash on any individual politician or thing, but I want you to understand why perspective is important and why education and knowledge is so important. And I didn't hear one governor in the entire country say this, what they should have said. I heard them all say the following: my first priority is to what? Keep you safe. What would Patrick Henry say about that? That's what the practical guys were saying. At the Virginia Convention, they were saying, we have no army, we have no guns, we have no organization, we're not ready for this. And Patrick Henry, when are we going to be stronger? We've got to start. Where were the leaders that said the following? And boy, I got bashed on back then. You want people to die and all this? It's like, no. Look, we know from history, if you're going to err, where do you want to err? On the side of liberty. And with everything getting blown out of proportion, Russiagate and these kind of things, was it any wonder? And I'm not saying COVID's not real, but we need to have perspective, people. The reason the West was saved is because Churchill had perspective. While everybody else was losing their minds, he had historical perspective. Not just personal perspective, but he was a historian. And he had been into some tight situations in the charge of the Light Brigade in Africa. He had been in Pakistan, India, Cuba. In the Boer Wars, he had been in tight spots. It's almost like John Paul Jones, we have not yet begun to fight. He's like, why is everybody going crazy? There's nobody on our soil yet. So why are we putting up the flag? Why are we overreacting so soon? So the thing that went viral was, where are the governors saying this? Yes, my first priority is to protect your liberty. It's in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. What is the proper role of government? To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Does it not say that? This isn't a hidden pearl of wisdom. It's out in the open. But we did not have one governor, and I'm picking on both sides. Yes, some of them got it later. But where was the one, Churchill, who did not flinch? Because they all flinched. I don't care who they were. Where was the one governor that said, my primary role is to defend your liberties? And yes, there are times of emergency that those principles and priorities switch. And there are times that we have to subordinate our liberties for this. And under these emergency powers, I'm going to do this for the next 2 to 3 weeks or even month. Okay, but we fought a revolutionary war over no taxation, over representation. And guess what, people? They weren't just talking taxation. They were talking any coercive act by a centralized government without our input. So, because of that, and under the powers vested in me, I'm going to take these drastic actions for 2 to 4 weeks, and I'm going to call an emergency session of the legislature, because your voice needs to be heard. And I'm going to ask all the state senators and legislators of the lower house to convene town hall meetings. And I want to hear from you, and I want to hear from them. And we are going to decide together, because that's how you do it, not in a democracy. That's how you do it in a republic.
Jefferson said, I prefer dangerous liberty than to secure tyranny.
So the reason I bring this up, have we gone in the last 20 years from the American mindset back to the colonial mindset?
Sure have.
That we are okay with subordinating the primary principle of what we were founded on.
Fundamentally changed this country in 2008.
Yes. Yes. And I have been, and I'm just a little guy, but I do what I can. And the reason I do what I can is the following. And I could tell stories all night, and I have a lot to say, because I think a lot about this. But when Jimmy told me, take care of my family, I knew I would try my best, but we're never there. I can always do better. But when he said, take care of my family, we had the first dinner for the Naval Special Warfare Foundation, now called the Navy SEAL Foundation in Tucson. And I'm not telling you this story to pat myself on the back, but I am telling it because you take the first step and you never know where you're going. So we had the first dinner, thank you. We had the first dinner in Tucson, and we raised a little bit of money, like $100,000, which is pretty big for Tucson. People understood it. And then we had another dinner in 2005. And then we did a dinner in 2006 out in San Diego. And we had the head of New York's Oppenheimer Fund come to that dinner. He put his arm around me and he said, Jeff, I appreciate what you're doing. Now let's take it to New York City and make some real money. So in 2007, they went to New York, and for one night, they made almost $6 million in 2006. And we had the first dinner in 2004. There was $200,000 in the bank account to support the families of the people that I knew, and the SEAL operator had died or been injured. Today, there's like $100 million in that account. And what I'm saying, I didn't raise most of that. But what do? You take the first step. And then you help recruit. And so I wouldn't even try thinking that. But somebody just came up and did it. I'm almost out of time. I could go on for 2 more hours. But I want to tell you a story. And I got a lot of stories. But the guys who want to become part of that highest level SEAL team have to go through training. So they're SEALs and they come in and they go through another 6 months to a year training. 2019, I take this group out on a 4-mile ocean swim. Not that long. But the ocean's pretty wavy that day. So it makes it a little more interesting when the waves are going. So we start off, and we're working on things on the way up, and we get out of the ocean, and there's a berm between the ocean and the base. And we're sitting there talking, and then the last guy comes swimming up. He doesn't come swimming, he swims up, and he's crawling up, vomiting, not doing anything, and he just plants down. His face is in the sand, hands are, and we still got 2 miles to go. We were working on one thing the first 2 miles, and then we're debriefing, and then we're going back. And at 8 o'clock every morning on this base, what happens? National anthem plays. So as we're sitting there talking, you can hear the national anthem barely way back on base over the berm. And I couldn't hear it, but all of a sudden I see all these guys standing at attention. Look at that. Cody's still laying down on the sand. You guys go over and grab him. Pick him up. He can't stand. He's so sick. These guys are standing at attention. And I'm still wet. I'm glad they can't see me because I'm behind them just crying. Do we still believe? That's why I brought this. I'll just show you real quick. I got 1 minute, I think, so I'm going to close up quick. This is one of my favorite paintings. The Statue of Liberty. And if you look close, you know, it's kind of hard to tell. Is she in a good mood or not? It's kind of like Benjamin Franklin looking at the back of Washington's chair at the Philadelphia State House, right? Is that a rising or setting sun?
It's a rising sun.
Do we still believe? And I think it is, do we still believe in the principles as outlined in the Declaration of Independence? Are our principles still where they should be? Are our priorities where they should be? Because the only way we're going to win is if our priorities are where they should be. If we go back to the American mindset and throw off the colonial mindset that's coming, that we learn and are educated, because when I go around and teach these men and women in the military to change their perspectives and to understand that after the Declaration of Independence was shouted from the rooftops, that from all 13 colonies having slaves, that within the first 20 years, 7 of those 13 had either abolished or were on their way of abolishing slavery. That the father of the abolition of the Atlantic slave trade was an American. And nobody reads about it anymore. Look it up. Anthony Benezet, who gave Wilberforce his kind of start. You look at the history of what Anthony Benezet did. But anyway, I could go on. Cody, now, so they raised him up while the national anthem was going on. They stood at attention, and they didn't have to do that. There was nobody else there watching. And of course, as soon as the national anthem ended, what happened to Cody? They just plopped him back down. We still had 2 miles to go back in rough seas, and I went up to Cody and I said, Cody, look, man, you know, if you want to walk back or whatever, do what you know, I'm not going to say anything or do anything, and nobody here is going to say a word. And he looked at me and he says, I would rather be dead, sir. We still got guys like that. So I will close on this. People come to me, and I'm not a SEAL, I'm not in the military, I do the swim training. But here's what they ask me. What is the secret to making it through SEAL training? I said, all you got to do is know one thing. They're like, oh yeah, tell me what that is. I said, you got one question to ask yourself every day. And if the answer of that is no, then you don't quit. And you ask yourself the following. Am I dead yet? And if the answer to that is no, you've already pre-decided you're not going to quit. That's it. And if you don't do that, guess what? If you go into it saying, I'm going to see how I do, what you're going to do? You're going to quit. And so what I am saying is none of us are dead yet. And each of us have certain talents like Shane recommended. And each of us needs to get involved, because my saying in my heirs of the Republic is freedom is not a spectator sport.
Yes.
Or we're going to get run over. Thank you for having me.
Jeff, I don't know about the rest of us in this room, but I absolutely believe that we will win. No doubt about it, we're going to win. And one of the reasons I know we're going to win is because we got young adults like Haven and Peter, that newly wedded couple there. Haven comes in here and sings the national anthem better than any baseball game I've ever been to, and listen to the national anthem or any other event. Thank you, Haven. That was absolutely fantastic. Come on up. So Joe and I, we started this group about a year and a half ago because we were sick and tired of sitting on our rear ends watching what was going on before the 2020 election. And I'll tell you what, from a group of about 5 or 7 guys sitting in his theater room, we've grown to what we are today. Thank you to Mr. Krauser for his experience and his leadership. We're able to do what we're doing right now. And we want to thank you all. No matter what you've done here tonight, if you've given $1, 50 cents, 20 bucks, or nothing, just the fact that you're here tonight supporting this liberty movement means all the world to every single one of us here tonight. And I'll tell you what, when I was 23 years old and I took that oath when I became a police officer, I took an oath that I would die to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and also to defend people that I didn't even know, nor did I like, for heaven's sakes. You know, and that's what these military guys do on a daily basis. But stepping back from that for a second, that's what each one of us is willing to do. And I can guarantee that probably most of you here would do the same. You would die for this country. I know I would. You know, I've often listened to the founding fathers, the story of the founding fathers, that they would die for the country, for those principles, those ideals that they were standing up for. And I thought, wow, how in the world would you die for an ideal or a principle? But as I've gotten older and I've learned, I understand. It's from my little daughter over there who's got her little Let's Go bracelets little business that she started selling bracelets with Let's Go branding on them. And save the USA, save America. That's what I would die for. And I know Joe would too. So everybody remember that Shane Krauser, Jeff, Utsch, who just spoke to us, they've got some really neat merchandise over there if you want to take a look at the books, the shirts. My daughter's selling some fun little trinkets, some nice little bracelets. Nicole's got her hand up. I'll give it to you in 1 second, Nicole. I wanted to let you know that Marcella Orr, stand up Marcella, she's way in the back here. She is a great, great asset to our group. She is actually trying to become, and this is an example of action, action, action. Marcella is trying to become a PC committee woman, and what she needs is signatures on her partisan nomination petition, because she does need to be actually elected to that position now. So if you live west of Higley Road, east of Lindsay, and south of Germain, and north of Queen Creek area, that's square, please go back there and sign her petition tonight before you leave, okay? If you do that for us. And thank you very much. Nicole, I'll have you stand up in just 1 second. Joe, do you have anything?
Hey, Joe, like Jeff said, just hey, thank you all for coming out. We do appreciate that.
And please tell people about this. We do want this, this community that we're creating to continue to grow. So please, 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 just some more people. Also, just want to see U.S. Law Show is back here also. So, anyways, they can kind of educate you on what they do, but they've helped us out financially. They've donated to our cause. So I just want to make sure that we mention U.S. Law Show. They've been really helping us out. They're going to be helping us out with this, the March 5th event. So that's another, that will be an amazing event that I would strongly encourage you to go to. And we are limited. It's going to be in this room here. And I think we've already had over 150 people sign up. Is it almost 4 people? 100?
400 people registered.
Yeah, so we've already, so I mean, it's getting packed. So you don't want to turn away people, but we're going to have to. So anyways, I think this capacity is right around 500. So that's where we're capping it. So if you guys would, please, please sign up so you guys can make sure that you got your reserve here. And again, thank you. Thank you all for showing up. We greatly appreciate it.
I just want to say, this weekend, there's a rally down in Phoenix, a Second Amendment rally that's going on down in Phoenix. If you're interested in going to that, there's also a show called, it's like Back the Blue. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's a movie about supporting police officers and how really the police officers have been become the bad guys in the whole situation, and how that evolved. And so those two things are happening this weekend. And so if you're interested in knowing more, I'll make sure that Jeff gets the information on it. But I just, the Second Amendment rally and the movie, I think the Second Amendment rally is really a good way to meet other people that feel like they need to do something as well. So, and you're standing up for your Second Amendment rally. Woo! All right, that's all. Everybody, thanks.
All right. It's at the state capitol.
State Capitol.
It's downtown state
Yeah,
capitol.
the Capitol.
At the Capitol. At the Capitol.
And tell them
Yeah, well,
it's
you know,
a kids-friendly.
10 to 2, Capitol Mall area.
Right.
Kid-friendly, bring the family, rock on. Thank you very much.
Guys, this is Marco Talk Show. As you know, we are United Patriots AZ. We just happen to finish right now. I hope you watch us and you enjoy the show and you got a lot of knowledge from our guests. Thank you so much. Marco Talk Show. We don't say goodbye, we say stay tuned. Regarding the Second Amendment, it's happening this Saturday. I hope you go walk down at the state capitol in Arizona. Have a wonderful evening. We don't say goodbye, we say stay tuned. And thank you for your support of their life.